Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a book chat for the Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Mistborn First Era trilogy, and it was a reread for me, so a lot of this video is going to be spoilery chat stuff. I'm going to do a very brief review portion of this, and then I'll get into all the spoiler stuff because there's a lot. So the first time I read this trilogy, I enjoyed the first book. I liked it. I thought it was really unique. I really was kind of on the fence for a while because I had never read Sanderson before, and the pacing, there's a lot of build-up. It was always interesting, but it wasn't necessarily edge of your seat, I have to turn the page kind of a read for me until the last chunk, and then I found it very, very, very much a page turner. And by the end, I really appreciated all the build-up. I felt like I knew the characters, I felt like the stakes were high, and it was so much more impactful as a result. But then I picked up the second one, and I felt like it just took it to a next level. I know that's not going to be the case for everybody, but I personally think that this one, right from the start, has action. You know the magic system, so you don't necessarily need as much information on it. You get some things revisited so that you're not totally clueless in case you take a bit of a break between the first and the second. But I just find that this one, right away, you know the stakes, and they are high, and they continue to get raised as the story goes on. There's so much political intrigue, so much political intrigue, and I think the character development in this one is amazing. At times it's frustrating, and by that I mean that at times I feel like the characters themselves can be kind of aggravating, but it is all realistic, I found. I feel like everybody's struggles make sense, and it makes the characters more relatable, and then by the end of the story, you just care about them more, you feel more connected to them. I also find that the magic system is already incredible. It's fascinating, it's unique, you know its rules and limitations, which I think, while some people prefer magic to have more of a sense of wonder, I think for those people that really, really enjoy the fact that his magic systems almost feel scientific, I think you're gonna like that there are kind of new discoveries in this one. It makes the magic even cooler, and you really get to know more about this world in this one. It's just so good in my opinion. I think it's better than the first one, but I gotta talk about spoilers now. So the official non-spoiler part is over. Time to get into specifics. Fair warning, the majority of this is going to be me fangirling, but I am gonna start with two things that are very much personal preference things. One is a character thing that I was frustrated with, and then one is just a pacing thing, I suppose. And I'm going to start with that one because it's the bigger of the two. So the pacing thing that I want to address is that I felt like so much of this book put so much emphasis on the armies and the fact that there is just somebody constantly trying to get Elend's throne, and there's constantly somebody wanting to take Luthadel. And because that felt for me like the bigger threat in this one, the whole last part with the Well of Ascension, while it serves its purpose in setting us up for this very ominous, oh no, what the heck is coming now, sort of a place for the third book, I just feel a little bit like I wanted the aftermath of the battle to be kind of where this one ended. And then this sense of like, what's going on with the Well of Ascension though? And then we can start the next book off there. Obviously, I know where it ends up. I know where things go. It makes sense that it's here. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just for me. And I'm curious if you guys are like this too. The first time I read this, I remember the aftermath of the battle and then being like, there's still a decent amount of like pages left. And then getting that last chunk, which again is very ominous and definitely I think makes you curious about what's going to happen in the next book, which is how you want your middle book to end. But I just kind of felt like there's so many emotional moments after that battle and during that battle, and I kind of wanted us to just be in that moment for a little longer, and we kind of moved on to the Well of Ascension stuff, and it doesn't cheapen the emotions by any means, but I just wanted to sink into those a little bit more. The other thing, it's a character thing, and it's not, oh, this character's acting out of character. It's not anything like that. It's just me being frustrated, like once at Elend. And it's because, okay, so Vin is starting to feel just so out of place. She doesn't know what her purpose is. She's questioning where she's supposed to be and her relationship with Ellen, all of this stuff. And that moment when she just fights her tiny little heart out, and tiny like she's tiny, not her heart's tiny. I just mean like she's so small, and she's fighting all of those Allomancers in the assembly, during the assembly meeting, and she just annihilates them. And then she headbutts that guy, and his head basically explodes, and then Ellen's horrified, and he like looks at her, just, he's so disturbed by what just happened. And then she's like, no, not that. So that moment happens. I understand that it would probably be pretty horrifying to see somebody's head explode, especially if it's the person you love who just like headbutted them. I get that. But it's when he flinches, when she goes to reach for him, I'm like, dude, come on. Like, I was super frustrated when he flinched. And then later he has this thought. He thinks she did it to protect me, but that doesn't make it any less disturbing. Maybe that even makes it a little more disturbing. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't make it more disturbing. Like, you know, this whole book, you know, she's been going around and killing the assassins that are coming after you, and she has to do whatever it takes to make sure that the King of Luthadel doesn't die. And somehow it's more disturbing. I'm like, if she just did it for the heck of it, that would be super disturbing. I'd be concerned. But she did it to save you. I think what he means, what Ellen's thoughts are really, is that he feels like it's almost his fault. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to rationalize, but I'm like, people go to great extremes to try and protect those that they love. And he knows that Vin does that. He's just never seen it. And so I feel like the scene is disturbing, not necessarily the fact that she cares so much, but that thought is so frustrating because like I have to like work around it to make me not be frustrated with Ellen. I think I'm just frustrated at Ellen in this one moment. The rest of the book, the man is just, he's so good. I mean, I was frustrated at him. This is gonna be so all over the place. It's not structured whatsoever. Clearly, I have tons of tabs. But the part when they ask him, when Set's like, oh, honorable, you're talking about honorable? Are you telling me that your soothers haven't been soothing this crowd? And Vin's like, do not fess up to it. And she's thinking to herself, like, come on, don't do it. And he's like, they have. And it's like, come on, man. Like, you can't admit that right now. But that to me is so ingrained in Ellen, to be honest and truthful. And I like his character. And I like that he is true to his character and his ideals. In that moment, though, you're like, gosh darn it, just say you don't know. Be like, I don't know, I'm not a soother, I can't tell. All right, from here on out, I'm basically just going to be praising this book because it's so good. It's so good. Okay, so I want to talk about the battle, and I want to talk about the deaths. They were so much harder for me this time than they were the first time. We're getting to know the side characters more, and when Clubbs, okay, I think Clubbs' death hit me way harder this time because Clubbs to me is one of those characters that he's not that significant of a character, but you can imagine him, you can picture him, you know exactly the kind of character he is, and that conversation that Sazed has with him about religion and faith, and he gives him that little wooden thing before the battle, and you just kind of get this glimpse of another side of Clubbs. And then his death is so sudden when it happens because you see it through Breeze's eyes and they're trying to get away, and just all of a sudden Kolos like cuts off his arm and you're like, no, like I can see it as if I was watching a movie and being like, oh no, that kind of a moment. And then when Sazed finds him with he had taken the thing on a necklace, and it was like, oh, my heart, poor Clubbs. Plus, Clubbs was a boss. When they're all trying to figure out what's gonna happen, and they're like, maybe we should do this, maybe we should try this, and they're having a little meeting, he's like, we're gonna stay, and we're gonna die. It's like, whoa. And it was just, I love that moment. He was resigned to die, so in some ways, you kind of, I mean, you're not happy that he dies, but you kind of, that I'm glad he dies the way he dies in a weird way, because you knew that he was like, this is what I'm fighting for. So he died fighting for what he believed in, which I think fits his character, and I really liked that. And then with Dachshund's death, I think Dachshund's death both times, weirdly, I think was a good thing, because when he has that conversation earlier with Vin, and he's talking about he doesn't want to come to terms with the fact that he maybe killed some people that didn't deserve to be killed back in the day when he was just ruthlessly killing nobles. And he so clearly is not the same anymore without Kelsier and this world. He had a purpose in taking out the Lord Ruler, but I think he's lost that purpose now. The Lord Ruler's gone, and all of this stuff with Dawson. And so when he dies, I kind of felt like it was good for him. It was almost a happy ending for him to die because he wasn't the same anymore. And this is gonna be me like the whole time in this chat, but I just felt like it was good for him. Does that make sense? Now talking about the death, that, oh my gosh, I was like, keep it together. Tyndall dying, oh my gosh. So Tyndall, I personally love her character. She is so harsh and blunt, but she just is wise, and she's always kind of, I wouldn't say confrontational, but she's challenging. She challenges people a lot. And she's such a contrast to Sazed. But seeing Sazed, who always thought he would never find love, and that love wasn't really for him, to see him find that with her, it was so wonderful. And then she dies, and when he finds her in the snow and he just holds her and he cries, oh my gosh. Like, books don't make me cry, but I'm getting choked up right now. I just felt so bad for Sazed. I'm like not having coherent thoughts because now I'm thinking about it. I'm trying not to get teary-eyed. But I think that Sazed's character development throughout this one is, it's maybe not character development, but it's more of just a portrayal of his character, because in the first book, he doesn't have a perspective. I think I forget that sometimes when I'm reading this, that he wasn't a perspective at all in the first one, but it feels like he was when you're reading this one, because you feel like you know Sazed. He's so sweet and he's so kind, he's so calm, and he just has this gentle soul. And then when he sees Tyndall dead and he just feels so lost, it just pulls at my heart. All of that, of course, is all very tragic, and it's all a result of that freaking Jastes. Oh my gosh, that little weasel. I have to say, I'm not in real life like condoning beheading people and stuff, but when Ellen just like takes his sword and cuts Jastes' head off, I'm like, thank you. I hated that guy. Like, I was so proud of Ellen in that moment, and Jastes was just the worst. Weren't you guys so happy when Ellen cut that guy's head off? Or were you like, oh, this is not my Ellen? I mean, maybe you would feel bad because you feel like Ellen was so sweet and now he's having to become kind of a harder person. But I loved that moment because I hated that guy. Speaking of hating people, Straff Venture is forever and always one of my favorite villains because he is so awful. Everything about Straff Venture is awful. I mean, he has that weird, disgusting thing with like, he will basically rape young girls, and then he gets tired of them when they're like in their mid-20s because they've just already had too many kids and they're all saggy. And just, you're like, dude, you're so disgusting. So he's disgusting in that regard. And then, so when he, toward the end, when the battle is happening, and Yanarl, is that guy? I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name because I was reading and not listening to the audiobook at that part. But when his general guy is like, shouldn't we go like save Luthadel now and then rescue all the remaining people and stuff from the Koloss? And he's like, let's let them all get slaughtered. You're like, no, man, come on. And I remember the first time I read this, it's that whole battle is so well done, and there's so much tension, and you don't know who's gonna live and who's gonna die, and some people have already died, and you're just like, dude, are you literally gonna let all these people die? And so when that moment comes up, you're like, okay, dude, I hate you, but just like go save the city now. And I don't even care if people view you as like their savior or whatever. Just go save them. And he's like, nah, I'll just let the Koloss kill everybody. And I'm like, come on, no, because I was scared that like more people were gonna die. So Straff just is the worst. And then same with when Ellen killed Jastes, when Vin just soars through the air and like cuts him in half with a Koloss sword. I'm like, that's right. That is why I love Vin. Beyond that stuff, man, I tabbed so much in this, and all of this is good stuff except for the orange, which is foreshadowing. So I could spend like hours talking about this book. So I'm gonna try to narrow it down to like a few specific things. So there's the whole battle stuff, and then some like issues, if you will, I have with it, which weren't even issues. But I want to kind of talk about the relationship between Vin and Ellen, and I'd love to get your guys' perspective on how you felt about it. So I personally, the first time I was reading it, kept thinking to myself, and I'm not, to quote, I feel like society. I'm not like thirsty, you know, like I'm not sitting here like, hey, can you guys bang already and give us the details? Like I'm not saying I wanted all of that. But I guess they were just so meh when the first time I was reading it that I was like, is anything gonna like, are these two actually, are they gonna even get together? I can't even tell. Because the first time in the first book, you read the first book, and for a long time, I couldn't tell if Ellen was somebody to trust or not, so I didn't feel that connected to the guy. I didn't know if I should like him or not, and so by the end of the book, I'm like, oh, okay, he's good. But I didn't love him. And then in the second book, I'm like, oh, well, maybe we're gonna see more of them. Now that I know he's a good guy, now that Vin knows he's a good guy, maybe their relationship will be a little bit more of like a relief from all the tension. If anything, it was like another form of tension. And I just remember being so frustrated with the two of them the first time because I'm like, just either get together or don't, and like just deal with this because it affected them so much. But I actually really appreciated it by the end. And I still appreciated it both times. First time I appreciate it even more this time because in the first book, realistically, Ellen doesn't know Vin. He knows Villette. He knows her noble self that she is putting forward. He doesn't really know her. So even though a year has passed, when this one starts, he's still having to get to know Vin. He didn't know her that long, and he's known her now for a little bit. He's just getting to know the real her, and it makes sense that they're gonna have issues because she has had so many trust issues her whole life. She trusted this one person, Kelsier, and then he went and died. And so not only has she always felt like somebody's gonna betray her, but now when somebody does it and she loves them, she feels like she has to protect them at all costs, and she feels helpless because everybody is after Ellen. And so she's so obsessed with protecting him, and he has to stay. She has to keep him around, and she just feels like, I'm not good enough for him. He's such a good person, and I'm this killer. I'm this monster. And everything about their relationship, while it wasn't your typical like, oh, how sweet, they kissed. It wasn't that at all. It still, I think, it was good. I really, really loved the way that it was handled. And I'm not going to say anything about the third book because obviously some of you haven't read it. We're not there yet. But I think it had to happen. I think all of their struggles needed to happen. And Vin kind of very much so toward the end of this book makes a decision in a lot of ways about who she is, what she wants, and what's important to her. And I think once that clicks for her, and once Ellen finally kind of comes into his own, then they, in my opinion, they just fit, they work. And so it was good that they went through that struggle. And it's realistic. Couples go through struggles. Just made for some frustrating moments sometimes. Something that I have seen some people discuss when they talk about this book is Zane and the fact that he's like a love triangle person. I've never thought that. I never got the vibe that this was some kind of a love triangle because Vin always loved Ellen. The whole time she's kind of telling Zane like, yeah, I love him. And he's like, but you're his tool. And she's like, but I like him. Like, I don't mind. Like, I appreciate it. She's constantly like, dude, it's fine. So I don't feel like she ever was choosing. There's that moment where she's discussing with Sazed, which that scene is hilarious when she comes in to talk to Sazed and then immediately Ellen comes in to talk to Sazed and both of them kind of kick Tyndall out. That part's great. But she has that moment where she's talking to Sazed and she says, but what if there's someone else? I don't take that as she legitimately was considering, like, but I love Zane. I don't know who to choose. She was choosing a side of herself that she felt she was supposed to accept. She didn't feel like she could be the person that Ellen needed and be a Mistborn, which the Mistborn side of her would have fit with Zane. I don't think that she legitimately was actually wanting to pursue Zane because she loved him. I think she just didn't know herself very well. So I never got the impression that it was a love triangle. I think Zane was an interesting character. I think he was definitely, sometimes he felt like a plot device for Vin's character development, but I guess I could say sometimes. I don't even think of it really that way. Some people just really hate Zane's presence. Some people love Zane and wish there was more of him. I haven't met too many people that are kind of right in the middle that are like, he was interesting. He provided a lot to the story. So let me know your thoughts on Zane. I think I actually am kind of in the middle. I liked Zane as a character. I thought he was fascinating, and I think he gave us some insight into some interesting stuff. And he definitely did kind of confront things in Vin, and in a weird way that kind of helped Vin find herself, if you will. But I didn't hate him, and I didn't think that he should have been like in the story so much more. I just thought he was there for a good amount of time. And now we have to talk about the thing that I always want to talk about when I mention the Well of Ascension, and that is the who is the spy? And oh my gosh, do I feel so stupid, because the first time I read this, I was like, I'll just enjoy the story and not beat myself up over who it could possibly be. Like, I wasn't trying that hard to figure it out. And so when it was revealed, I was so shocked. I was like, what a twist. And then this time around, like, all those orange tabs, almost all of them are all the times that Sanderson was letting you know that it was her Chandra, that it was Orsur. Tensoon, however you want to say it. And I just felt so dumb for not getting it, because there's so many times that it's pretty obvious, and man, did I not catch it. But I don't feel so bad, because most people that have read this also didn't figure out that it was him. So definitely let me know if you called it, and how far in advance did you call it, or was it a right before that happened kind of a thing, or were you like me, you weren't even trying to figure it out, or were you trying and then you guessed very wrong. Something I loved about Orsur's character, I'm just going to call him Tensoon, because I feel like I'm never saying the other name quite right. Tensoon. I, first off, loved his dog form, because even though he's a Chandra and he's not actually a dog, I loved that he was kind of sort of an animal companion for Vin, and I loved their friendship. It's not something I think a lot of people will even really think of as a friendship, but reading this, I'm like, yeah, no, they're kind of pals. I mean, they start off as just they're forced to work together, and then they actually have all these really fantastic conversations, and I think he kind of helps Vin grow as a person more than maybe most of the other events in the story. She clearly has some kind of an emotional connection to him. She doesn't want him to be hurt, and even after she finds out that he was the spy, she's not mad at him whatsoever, because which I love, because if this were, I mean, there are some stories that for the sake of drama, it would have been like, how dare you? And I love that's not Vin. She wouldn't do that. I feel like Vin might have the potential to be cutthroat, but I think there is a side of Vin that is actually extremely compassionate, and she completely understood that Tensoon's reasons were valid, and she respected that. And then he also grew to really care about her, and he felt awful for what he had to do, but I loved that moment of understanding between the two of them after it was revealed what he did. I just love their friendship. I think it was one of the best I've seen in a story. The two of them, they're so clearly not the same. I mean, she's a human and he's a Chandra. They're not even the same kind of species, but they weirdly, I've said weirdly a lot in this, sorry, they have a connection based off of lives that shouldn't be that similar, but they are. And I just think that the way they help each other grow is so well done. There are so many more things I still want to talk about, but I'm going to wrap this up by kind of just hitting on the Elend losing his throne, Elend not being king, just everything to do with the assembly and the siege and the politics, all of how that tied together was so seamless. There was always constantly something. It was never ending. It was just, our characters could never catch a break. And I'm very curious, for those of you that were reading this for the first time, did you actually think that Elend was going to lose the throne? Because I have such a vivid memory of the first time that I was reading this, driving, and I was stuck in traffic, and it was on audiobook, obviously. I wasn't like sitting there like, well, it's slow, so I'm gonna read. But I was listening to the audiobook, and when it gets to the moment where they have the vote, and then it's a lock because they need a percentage of the votes, 2/3. And when they get it, and Ellen's like, yes. And I thought the same thing. I was like, yes. I was just so into it. And then that idiot is like, can I change my vote? And I was like, no. I just remember being shocked that he lost the throne and being so upset. And I was so frustrated again with him being so honest and having so much integrity, because I was like, just say you can't change your vote, come on. But anyway, that part was too good to not mention in this. there's so many parts that are probably worth mentioning that I'm not going to be able to talk about right now. But anyway, let me know what some of your favorite moments were. Let me know which character deaths hit you the most. Let me know how much you hate Straff, because oh my gosh, is he the worst. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, and for those of you that are reading this for the first time, I hope you really loved it. If you're rereading it, I hope you enjoyed the reread, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.